So let's get started. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Welcome to the Analytic Tableau User Group, the first one of 2025. What is the Analytic Tableau User Group? The Analytic Tableau User Group, it's a group where we speak about, guess what? Tableau and Analytic. And it can go through Tableau Desktop, Web Edit, As Data, anything around this. And we always try to focus around analytics, obviously. So if you haven't registered, please do so using this QR code. And otherwise, you can always send us love in Twitter, X, analytics tags, or in social media using our LinkedIn profile, mine, Chimdi, or Prasam, or the three of them. Please do so. Also, yes, I already said who are the team. So it's us, this beautiful face. Look at us. So Prasam is a senior BI engineer for Emirates. Chimdi, a database designer. If you haven't seen their profile, you should definitely go and see. They are really artists and also good in analytics, I have to say, because they have this talent to join both ends, like the mathematical part and the analytical part with beauty. Whatever they are doing, it's excellent. And then I think that we have like individual slides about ourselves. My name is Annabelle Rincon. I should have started like this. My passions in life are obviously Tableau, chocolates, and animals. I'm living in Zurich, Switzerland. And I'm also co-leading an enablement webinar. You can check my YouTube channel and also Data Plus Women Zurich. We start 2 days ago back on the 2025, and we will have a session on data art. Otherwise, that is my blog and my Twitter. If you want like to send me some love, please do so. And then for this good analytic webinar, I am joined with Prasam. Prasam fell in love with Tableau and the data farm and learned the way of giving back. That's totally true. And he removed the slide, so now I cannot say anything good about him, apart that he's a visionary and an ambassador. He found Tableau Buddy and this dinner. And yeah, he loves cat, food, and anime. It will be almost a perfect trio if it will not be for cats, because for me it will be dog food and anime. But yes. And then we have like Chimdi. It's also it's also a visionary and an ambassador. It's a freelance and contract database for clients. He has 14 days of the day. We will never beat him, Prasam. Maybe if we add up mine and yours, maybe we can. We can try to reach him.
Maybe this year.
We should do the count. We should do the count.
But by that time, you're more. So
yeah, I know. We just have to remove a computer for 6 months, maybe, or 2 years. I don't know. No. Please continue, Chimdi. We are very proud of you. You always inspire us. He also co-lead Makeover Monday and participate to other challenge. And yes, functional aesthetic, definitely. And he's a Vis junkie. I absolutely guarantee it. So I will let Prasam and Chimdi introducing the speakers and the agenda for today. Thank you, guys.
Okay, before I hand over to Chimdi, some of the ground rules, we always talk about it. So if you haven't, please introduce yourself in the chat section. And we also have a Q&A section. So all of the questions you have, please put it over there so that we can take those questions to our speakers. And since it is being recorded, please don't try to make notes and enjoy the session altogether. And also, please follow us on Twitter at our AnticsTug handle. Please do share, and we always do these events. So it's always good to follow these channels and get to know as soon as possible. And the agenda we have is we are already done with the welcome. That's the amazing part, but not the most amazing part. The next part is first we are going to experience the new Tableau by Peter Jönsson. That's quite an interesting topic, and he also presented this at Dreamforce. Next, we have from data to drama, the power of comics in data viz. So if you're into data art or infographics kind of visualizations or storytelling, this is quite interesting because she sketches herself and then use those things and elements in her visualization. And then we have 50 Shades of Grey, How to Dominate Your Use of Color by Alex, who will be joining us half of the session. And followed by each of the session, we'll have Q&A. So now I'll hand it over to my buddy Chimdi for introducing our speakers.
Awesome, thanks, Prasan. So first off, we have Peter, and Peter is our Principal Solutions Engineer and Regional Field CTO at Tableau, and he's based in Stockholm, Sweden. He's a 7-year vet of Tableau, and he frequently speaks at the Tableau conference, obviously to bring in new advancements with the tool. He often appears as a keynote speaker at Euro data and analytics events and summits. He's always able and willing and keen on sharing breakthroughs with data analytics and addressing some of the current challenges that decision makers are dealing with, and of course his own thoughts and predictions for data analytics. Outside of Tableau, Peter loves to run marathons, and looks like he's really successful at it because he's completed 15 races, including Stockholm, Berlin, and New York City. And so today, Peter is going to bring us, a bunch of cool stuff in the new Tableau. Of course, the company is always looking to advance our analytics experience, bring in new things. And so Peter's going to talk to us about some of the great stuff that's coming in the tool. And so over to you, Peter.
Thanks a lot, Chimdi. Not so sure I love the marathons. I kind of done it now. I'm not going to get any younger or faster or anything, but I have actually completed 15 of them. So, but hey, that's a grind, isn't it? Let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay. You see my screen now, yeah? One of those things where I do not see you, or I don't see the Q&As or anything like that. So Chimdi, Prasan, and Annabelle, if you need to stop me or interrupt or anything for Q&As, or if we do that afterwards, please let me know, because I really can't see the thumbs or the questions. But hey,
I'm gonna
go.
do that.
Yeah, I know. That's cool. Okay. So yeah, thanks. I think Prasan said I presented this at the Dreamforce. No, I didn't. Matt Miller presented this at Dreamforce. So it is actually a presentation by the great Matt Miller. I think most of you know, who's our product evangelist out of HQ in the USA. And I was actually thinking, when I was going to ask by Annabelle and the team to do this when we met in London earlier, or at the fall, that I was going to, of course, base it on what's new in Tableau, but kind of like tweaked it more towards like the audience here, because I realized that most of the people who attend this session, you're not necessarily Salesforce people, right? You may not have Salesforce, heard of Salesforce, or care about it. You may have other systems and things. But then I was actually thinking, well, maybe not. Why don't I present to you how we see this fitting into the overall big picture of Salesforce? And we could also, of course, embed Tableau and use it within other applications and so forth. But there is a reason why I think it's good to understand how we see the platform fitting into a broader spectrum or so forth going forward. So enough about that. So I keep calling the session Discover Tableau Einstein, a deep dive into Tableau Einstein for Salesforce Cloud. Although I can tell you already, I'm not so sure that when this product see the dawn of light and it gets officially released to general availability, I'm not even sure it's going to be called Tableau Einstein anymore. I'm not even sure it's called Tableau Einstein right now. So please bear with me. The new version of Tableau may or may not be called Tableau Einstein. And so I put for Salesforce Cloud within parentheses, because you don't necessarily need to run Tableau Einstein within Salesforce Cloud. You can run it free of Salesforce, on SAP or on AWS or on Google Data, Snowflake, Databricks, whatever, right? I mean, but I'm going to discuss this a bit in and around from a Salesforce perspective so that you see and understand how we're thinking of this when we're planning the next phase. Yeah. My name is Peter. I'm a solution engineer based in Stockholm, Sweden, as just you know. And yeah, 7 years. I'm actually going on my it was going to be 8 year here in July. And I'm quite proud of that. I was here before the acquisition. I'm an old Tableau guy. I didn't come in through the, like Salesforce or anything. So I've seen the earlier versions. I was there before Prep was there or Cloud or anything like that. So I've been around for a while. I'm not nearly as skilled or data artistic as Chimdi or Prasanna or Annabelle or anything like that, but I've been around. I understand the platform enough to like speak a little bit about it and share some ideas around it. So that's kind of what I'm going to do here today. But of course, thank you very much, all of you, logging on, being here, participating, spreading the word, being true and honest to data visualization and to Tableau and the community and the data fam and all of that. So I mean, truly, from bottom of our heart, thank you very much for doing this, that we all, of course, love so much. One of these little guys, of course, for like a statement, this is, of course, my get out of jail card. So if I say any that might not necessarily end up in the future product, I'm actually one of those roadmap certified people. I've been certified by the great Matt Miller to actually give sort of roadmap presentations, but I need to put this in context that we're going to be looking at some things that might not necessarily be in the product yet, but it's our ambition, it's our goal, it's our North Star. This is where we're aiming for, right? So I'm going to give you a lot of good examples of what we're shooting for, what we're hoping that the product will look like when we're going forward. As I know, most of you have been around for a long time. You work with Tableau for a very long time. You know our mission statement, right? We help people see and understand the data. We go to bed with that. We understand it, and this is what we live for and everything like that. That may have changed. I'm not saying that, oh, have you changed the mission statement? Not really, but we now call it more, we help people see, understand, and act on data. And in all honesty, and you know, I mean, Annabelle and Chimdi guys, you know me, I'm a pretty transparent and open guy. And I'm going to say this straight up. This is a piece that I think was missing from Tableau from the beginning, from any BI tool or any BI platform, to be honest. I worked with a lot of them. That I can tell you this: when I first, after the acquisition of Salesforce to Tableau, and I did a presentation to a lot of my new Salesforce colleagues, I showed this is what Tableau's all about. This is the platform. I showed them some cool demos, some nice visits, some self-service, drag and drop, and all of that. Green pill, blue pill, you know. And I did all that, and I don't remember if I used a superstore, but you know, you get to the point and you get the low profitable tables in the East, and you figure everything out, and this is I understand. And then they were looking at me like, so what do you do now? I was like, what do you mean? I mean, I just uncovered everything for you. I built my sheets and I created calculations and table calcs and all. Yeah, you figured out the problem, but what do you do now? And I'm like, well, you need to go into, I don't know, your supply portal or whatever, and act on this and maybe stop selling those tables on the East Coast or whatever. I mean, you need to act. Exactly this. Shouldn't that be part of this? So that when you see all this in the great, fantastic Tableau, that you actually act on it from where you sit. That hit us hard, right? So we have, that piece is probably one of the biggest pieces you're going to see in the next releases or next versions or whatever we call of Tableau, that we're going to be able to act on the data, regardless of where we sit. Salesforce, in Workday, in wherever, we're going to act on this data, right? A big thing coming out of Tableau, Salesforce, and of course from Tableau and all the different logos or platforms out of our Salesforce is Agentforce. Agents. I mean, and I'm not going to drill down into this too much. You're going to hear more about it into the conferences and later wording and marketing coming on here during the year. But Agentforce is not necessarily a chatbot building kind of function or anything like that. It's our AI. It's our AI functionality towards more of an autonomous version. It's going to be able to help us do and create and act upon things. It will also come with more proactive recommendations and actions and activities and so forth. That's why we call it more Agentforce than regular bots or anything like that, right? So Agentforce will be the grounding platform of the technology within a lot of the releases and functions that Salesforce will release, and definitely from within Tableau as well. And I'm going to show you examples of that here quite soon. One of these slides, and AI is changing our expectations. Yeah, we heard that for a very long time. But look at this from the perspective. Look at over there to the left. Is that where people work? People work in Slack or in Teams or Salesforce, Workday, Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, wherever. And then you look over to the right and you say, insights don't necessarily live in those applications. You might need to build an analytical piece in Tableau or in any other BI tools to actually figure out why a certain pattern is occurring, or a dip in sales, or a dip in hire, or anything like that. Data don't necessarily live in either of those. They live in Snowflake, in Databricks, in Google, AWS, wherever, right? I mean, and that's none of this is going to change. But what we want to do is like maybe have Agentforce to create the better outcomes of these, so we can like tie these together. And again, I'm going to show you concrete examples of what we mean by all this. It's not necessarily pretty slides, right? But I'm going to show you some examples of that. So what we, from a Tableau perspective, yeah, that's where we're introducing Tableau Einstein, built on top and with Agentforce as the foundational layers. A couple of pieces that we already see that is kind of part of Tableau Einstein, if we still call it Einstein, everything like that, and I want to bring out to you. And it's, of course, first, Tableau Pulse in Agentforce, the autonomous insight we see. And you know what? This is nothing new. This has been in Tableau Cloud now for like a year and a half. Those of you who migrated from Tableau Server over to Cloud are already enjoying Tableau Pulse. And I think that's a fantastic addition to that platform. And I was a bit skeptical in the beginning. I didn't quite get it until I started like working on it. And then I showed it to a couple of customers, and they realized, this is what we have needed. This will be a great contribution to dashboards and to reports and to workbooks and things like that, because now we can see and understand data much quicker on like smartphones and things like that. So if you haven't checked out Pulse already, it's already in cloud, it's been there for a while, do it. That's one of the biggest foundational block or brick in Einstein. Second big piece that is coming here, going to be released quite soon. February, March is what I've heard, but it's quite soon here. It's going to be, I think, at least before the conference in San Diego. But that's the semantic layer. A new semantic layer that's going to be built on top of the Salesforce platform with inside Einstein. And that is going to be, I think, the most revolutionary, groundbreaking piece of it all, to be honest. Our Pulse was great too, but we've seen that for a while. But semantic layer is going to be really, really great. I'm going to talk a bit about it in a second. And then we have, of course, Data Cloud. Data Cloud has been out for about 2 years, more. I don't know. I think it's two and a half years, something like that. Salesforce product. This was built and created to tie together all the various clouds and applications and data layers of Salesforce. For example, the CRM application, the Service Cloud, the Marketing, all the different pieces that needed to be connected so we can share insights, so we can share customer ID, all these things are needed to be able to see and understand the data. And when you put Tableau on top of that, then you have a fantastic way of visualizing and viewing data from various aspects of Salesforce data, but also from other areas. We'll talk about that. And then we have a piece that we haven't seen either, and I'm going to end my demo with this, and that's the agent with composable architecture. Again, I have to say, one of the things that I think has been missing from Tableau for quite some time. If we build some really smart things, it's kind of hard sometimes to share it. If I build from within a workbook and I create a group, a segment, or anything, I can use it, I can leverage in the workbook, and I can't really save it to my repository and reuse all of those objects in other areas. That's what we're going to need to do. That's what the composable architecture will give to us now, that we're going to have a much more open, I say even a much more modern architecture around what Tableau can do. So I'm really looking forward to what we're doing there. I'm going to show you that in part of the demo as well. This is not the latest picture of the semantic layer that I've seen, but it's one of the better ones. So I'm sticking with this one. I think it's pretty cool. If you look into the left, of course, we're going to be able to connect. We're still, I say, the most agnostic BI vendor on the market today, much more than I would say Looker or Microsoft or any of the other guys. Because I mean, this is where Tableau came from, right? We didn't have our own database or anything like that. We needed to connect very, very well with on-prem data, with OLAP Cube data, with cloud data, follow all these like Exasol and Snowflake and Databricks and all. We're going to keep being very, very open to all these pre-built connectors, mobile web, on-prem data is still going to be important. All of that, none of that is going to change, right? We also going to be able to leverage zero-copy cloud with that data cloud thing. So which means that if you have fantastic data in BigQuery, and Snowflake, and Databricks, you're not going to need to move that over to data cloud. We have zero-copy connectivity to that. So that can reside in Snowflake, where you have good performance, good query speed, and all that, and we can still leverage very, very well with Snowflake. And of course, on the right, everything that is Salesforce, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, all these things, we're going to connect all of that. And here comes the interesting new parts, all of these things, and we're going to see more of that here when we release the semantic layer in a very short time frame. This piece right here in the middle, contextualize and engage, and I'm pointing towards like the metrics and visualizations, data query and analytics, extensible semantics, maybe a little bit of data modeling, because what Thomas Nunn and everybody was working on, that we now have shared dimensions and everything. I think we have a really good data model. This is the sweet spot of Tableau. This is what Tableau does very, very well. Always have, always will do. The rest has been difficult. Sometimes a bit challenging, right? I mean, to work with workflows, we needed to work with different applications and different technologies. We could interact and integrate with Teams now and Slack and all, but it's still an outside connector. We've never really handled real-time data integration and streaming very well, and none of the BI tools have. We will now. We will have streaming real-time data integration in the new semantic layer. Looking at data, we'll also say we can connect to a lot of the structured data, of course, from all the sources that I was talking about. But how about semi-structured or unstructured data? We're going to do that as well now. We're going to connect to much more data than we ever have before. That's going to be a fantastic way. So stay tuned for what we're doing with semantic layer that will come here, of course. So with that said, let's dive into the demo. And I'm going to share this with you. If you have been to a few of our conferences and things like that in the past well, year or so, like half year, 3 or 4 or 5 months, you may have seen something similar. Some of the demos has been out on YouTube and everything. But I realize also that many people have not been to the conferences. If you've been there and seen it, you may have seen it once, right? So I still think that even though a few of you may have seen part of or this demo before, I'm going to do it anyway again, and you're going to see the Peter Jönsson version, right? So this is where we're looking at from the new version of Tableau, where we're heading and where we're going with Tableau. Looking at this from, for example, a mobile device, an iPhone. I'm on the move. I'm looking at my phone every now and then, and whenever something pops up, an email or Slack or a message, I get it right here. This is a message. This is a notification from Tableau this time. 11:30 says low inventory forecast for the week ahead. And I'm like, well, what do you mean low inventory? I thought we were doing quite pretty well with inventory. I didn't foresee an inventory forecast issue. So of course I click on that. That opens Tableau Pulse. This is Pulse. We have integrated it with some workspaces, in this case, Marketing Cloud, Service, Sales Cloud, and so forth, because we're in the Dreamforce event and venue. We're addressing a Salesforce audience quite heavily. So you will see some of these Salesforce things, but it makes sense, right? We could integrate the workspaces from other applications and other brands and so forth as well. But here we see it. From within Tableau, we can see integrated with workspaces, and I'm looking at a couple of my metrics. And in this case, inventory is heading down. It's low, even though digital dimensions is up and so forth, but negative 22% and so forth. And I'm like, that's not good. I'm clicking on that one. I'm drilling into the metric. Those of you who have seen Pulse, you know what I'm doing. I'm drilling into the metric, trying to understand what is going on. And I can see from the forecast perspective, this is where we're going. This is where I am today. The forecast, if we continue as we are and everything else being equal, we're going to hit a very low mark here pretty soon, and we're going to go down to 45K of inventory. That's not good. and I can see what product is driving that, puffy jacket, things like that. That seems to be good, but I want to know what's driving the decrease. Click on that button, Einstein, come up, think, using this information with Tableau, of course, running a query, presenting a bar chart, a report to me, and it also gives me a summary. It's hey Samantha, compared to other top products, slip run and jogging sneakers have the fastest decrease. They account for what? The running shoes are what's driving the slowness or the depreciating my inventory. I had no idea what's going on with running shoes. Is that all over? Is that nationwide or what? Click on the region. I also want to see. And you see what I'm doing now? Now I'm starting analyzing this, doing regular Tableau stuff, right? Filtering, drilling, changing my dimensions and things. So I want to drill down and I see, okay, so the inventory here, it has to do with New York, San Francisco Bay. I can see that, the trend, yeah, Chicago's doing good, but it's New York and the Bay Area. I can break down by store and things like that, but you know what? Here comes the act again. I have seen, I understand, now I need to act. I can't like leave this here and say, oh yeah, we're doing pretty bad in New York and San Francisco. I submit a change request. Now I'm acting on this. Since I'm now connected on the Salesforce end, I can put in a change request to my inventory and supply chain system to say product, slip runner, and the other running shoes for these two regions, and adjust the distribution, and I can submit that request. That will now end up in somebody's queue that we need to act on this, and it has been addressed. I can see it. We're acting on this. And Einstein asked me, is there anything else I can do for you now? Okay, that's quite interesting. You know what? I want to know what's driving that surge. What's going on behind this? And it comes up with a couple of ideas. This is what we can see from Tableau as well today. It's like it gives us suggestions based on underlying data channels that we have access to. In this case, digital mentions, social media, talking like about slip runners, jogging running, kids runners. We see the Instagram Meta X or whatever it's called these days. We can see that a lot of people are tweeting, trending, talking about these running shoes. And that might be an underlying reason why we see a surge here, that we have a lot of talk around that. Okay, that's interesting. Should I go in and start looking at those? Or, nah, let me talk to an analyst on Slack. I want to understand what's going on here. So I need to talk to, for example, Kyle. So I send that message. Kyle sits on his Slack and he gets a message from me, from Samantha. I say, hey, Kyle, can you help me out? See, there's a mention for slip runner driving a lot of. Can you figure this out? And Kyle, of course, taking a look at that. See what you mean. I could be that the influencers are driving a lot of digital mentions. Let's do some analysis. So Kyle is a good guy. He figures out we need to take a look at that. So based on what Samantha and the agent took, let's open Tableau in this case. This is the beta. This is the new version of Tableau. If you haven't seen it before, I think it's pretty fresh. It's pretty open. It's white. It's cool looking, very modern. But we still see and understand our dimension tables. We see our marks cards that we recognize at labels and sizes. We have our green pill, blue pills, and all of that. And show me buttons and things like that we recognize. So that's pretty cool. Everything like we would have expected. And I see something new over here. It's called Insights. Insights, digital mentions. Right? Based on what I'm seeing on the canvas now, it's already starting to come up with ideas. Remember what I said, Agent Force being a little bit more autonomous, giving us proactive recommendations. So I can keep drilling and changing and building my own report here, or I can say, let's look at what this one is talking about. I need to go over there and take a look at that. But first, I might need more data. So this is my my marketing team canvas. If I go up here and say the digital mentions is a data source that is locked, I don't have access to it. I can talk to the people that is there, or I can actually create an extension of that and say, based on this, I can have a copy I'm entitled to. I don't need to change anything or alter anything in their semantic layer or in their data connectivity, but I can actually take a copy of the campaign data, streaming data, engagement, and I can create an influencer sentiment based on that, and I save that. And now I go back here and I have access to this one. And based on that, it says now sentiment versus mentions. Influencers are driving, so I click on that, and now I'm replacing the screen that I have in front of me with a regular, call it Hans Rosling bubble chart, right? I can see the sentiments from 1 to 5. I can see the digital mentions from 0 to 750,000. A lot of the top spoken about products are the running shoes. I can see that. That's been up here. And a lot of them also have a lot of high count in terms of followers or followers ID. Let me include then influencer ID to the detail. So now we can see who's there, what influencers are participating in all this and moving all this these tweets and this mentioning around this product. So I can do something that we have seen before. I can select a little part of this analytics, and I can create a group, and I can also now create a sentiment, or I mean a segment. This segment is what I'm viewing here, and I can actually publish this and give it a name, and I call it like high sentiment digital mentions. That can now be reused in other applications, in other workbooks, in other areas, towards other published data sources if I have the access to similar underlying data. But that is so usable to reuse these objects in other places and so forth. So that's definitely what I'm going to do in this case. And I'm going to copy this link. I go back to Samantha and said, I think I figured something out there. It turns out some of the influencers with a high sentiment are driving some of the mentions. We know that now. Here's the proof. I can see what's going on. Samantha likes that, but of course she comes back with, okay, can we target these followers with a campaign? Can we act on this now? Now we know so much about these people. We know so much about how they're driving this awareness. So let's do that. I'm on top of it. Click there and jump back. So what have we done so far? We have uncovered a lot of things from the inventory. We saw that the inventory was dropping. We figured out why the inventory was dropping, because we started selling a lot of shoes in certain markets. Figuring out it may or may not, but it had something to do probably with a lot of social media attention. Right? Could be, but this is like sometimes the way marketing works. You see a segment, you see a peak, you see an outlier, you see something that's going on. You want to act on it quite quickly to not miss the train. And in this case, we took that segment that was part of that analytics, the proof that we did through the analysis. And I created this segment called high sentiment digital mentions. And I can use this, in this case, inside of Marketing Cloud to create a campaign. In this campaign, new, and continue, do everything is pretty straightforward. And I gave it a name. This campaign is going to be called High Sentiment Digital Mentions. And now it can be used. So this campaign, if we fast forward, looking at what has been going on, you see up here now we're in Data Cloud, and the customer sentiment was very, very positive. Good conversion by channel, Meta, Instagram, and X, and so forth. These are all Tableau visualizations, right, that we're seeing here embedded inside of this marketing tool. And this is, again, how we want to see and reach a greater audience through Tableau by actually having the Tableau pieces added inside of the interfaces of where people work. Remember that slide I was showing there in the beginning where you see people work up there in Workday and Salesforce and so forth, but they have insights in other. Well, this is what we want to do. We want to bring those insights back into the applications where they work. And in this case, it's through marketing. What we did here was working through these campaigns, and looking at these customer sentiments, and the views were Spring Sneaker Digital Spotlight. That was the advertisement that we used based on this, and the campaign ROI was tremendous, of course. 89%, very, very nice. The actual cost was 45,000. We had a budget of 240. The expected revenue is 560. We had a very good run here. We did something very, very good with this insight that Kyle and Samantha brought to us by actually seeing the inventory drop and so forth. It could have sparked something like this, a marketing campaign that could be used from this insight that we had through Tableau. And that's what we're talking about a lot, that help see and understand people see and understand data and act on the data is a lot of what we're going to be doing here and pushing towards coming out of the Tableau Einstein release here that's going to happen here this year. So that is all good and dandy. I'm nearing the end of my demonstration, and I have done something well. We figured this out, and I've done a good marketing campaign and everything to that. But you know what I can do with this now? I can publish it to Marketplace. And most of you are looking at what's Marketplace? Well, what is that? Is that a new product? No, not necessarily. It's something that Salesforce had for a long time. We haven't been part of it from Tableau. What we have is two great things. We have Tableau Public, and we have Tableau Exchange. Exchange, of course, is where we can publish things that is not necessarily direct in the product. Could be other connectors or pre-built report data, workbooks, things like that. And people can download it. Some is free, some is paid for, and so forth. That's our Exchange. And then we have Tableau Public, of course, where all of you guys are very, very invested in, where we can share our own work. Marketplace might be a combination of those two, right? So I can say, I want to publish to my Marketplace, and I want to have the digital mentions, sentiment. I also need my semantic model. I don't need my prep flow for that. And let's test run this. This is me compiling this now, like you might have been compiling like a package or a workbook or something like that before a Twibix, before you publish it to your Tableau Public page. But okay, that's what I did. I compiled this, perform data, accessibility is cool, it's good. And I give it a name. Let's call it the influencer sentiment and mentions. Let's give it a long here description of creating some segments and drive activations. The tags I need is going to be AI, and I'm going to have social media and retail. And I'm actually give this a price. This is not going to be free. I could have had like paid or free, but I'm going to call it $130, $129.99. That's what I'm going to, and this is what it will look like. So I'm Kyle. I've done something pretty cool. I think I can package this and make it reusable, and I publish it to Marketplace. And it would look something like this. People can view it. They can preview it in Tableau, the way we can actually preview stuff in Tableau Exchange as well. They can download it, pay for it, and when they do, it will look like something like this, and it will be part of my profile. It will be part of the stuff that I already have published. For example, like many people work on Tableau Public as well. But this is kind of what I would have done that I could do, and I've given you some pieces of what I think are some of the coolest stuff that will come out of the next generation of Tableau. Looking at the interface, that might stay quite a bit the same, and but also adding a couple of new functions and features that I think we have been missing for a while. So let's end it with that, and bring back into my slide. Where am I in time? I'm pretty good on time, right? So what if you think this is interesting, you may have seen this demo before, you may have seen similar stuff, you heard something, you looked at on LinkedIn and Twitter and so forth. Blue Sky, if you're not on Blue Sky, that's a pretty good thing. It's like these days when people are looking at additional or social media platforms. So what the next thing should be, I mean, take a look at this blog post by Karen Madera, Senior Manager, Product Marketing. She wrote it here right after one of the conferences. And if you don't have it, I'm going to send the link is right there, and I'm going to sure Annabelle and Shindy and Prasan will share this with you. But this is a really good blog post. It tells you everything there needs to know. What is Tableau Einstein? It has the same demo that I just did in a recording. I think it's actually by Matt Miller. What is Tableau Einstein? What are the pieces? The pieces that I just showed you. Some links to agent and pulse and all of these things. It's a fantastic post that explains everything you need to know about Tableau Einstein so that you can prepare yourself, your customers, your stakeholders in your organization where you work, and say, this is where Tableau's heading and so forth. It's pretty cool. Here's everything about it. So no secrets around that. We're pretty open and pretty flexible on that. Let me bring that up. Okay. The other thing that you could do, if you want, of course, is book a plane ticket, go to San Diego in April, and participate in the great conference. Data 25, the TC 25 is going to be in San Diego, of course, and everything like that. Pretty cool and awesome. That is costly, right? Not all of us are able to do that. It's way out in California. It's a price tag associated to that, although I think it's well invested time and money, of course. But hey, here's my tip that I always share with everybody. Say, oh, it's not going to be possible. I'm probably not going to be able to go. I don't have time, this and that. Look at this. What I think you should do is register anyway. Not necessarily to the costly thing, but here, look at this. If you click on register and you don't want to go there, register for this one. If you register for the free version and you're going to be participating and getting everything live, of course, it's going to be in the middle of the night for some of us who's based in Sweden, Stockholm, Europe, and so forth. But hey, I don't need to stay up and watch all of it live. But what you do get if you register for this free version is that you're going to get all the links to all the recordings. Not all of that stuff will end up on the YouTube pages, right? So if I were you and you figured I might not be able to go to San Diego, register here. Get your name here so you will get these links when we release all the recordings of all the great sessions. I don't know if Prasan, Shindi, and Annabelle and all of them are going to be there, but those are the people that actually do and deliver some of the greatest presentations and sessions and material, and most of that will be made available through recordings such as these, but you need to have put your registration in place to get that. That's my, but also, of course, if you participate, you will hear a lot more about the next new version of Tableau, regardless if we're going to call it Einstein or not. We'll stay tuned for that. So with that, believe it or not, I'm able to take questions. Or if you want to cut me off and go to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Peter, for this whole presentation, talking about the new Tableau and how it's actually going to sit between the business and the analytics we were doing and how it's going to assist. So that will be quite a game changer. And that was quite a great thing what you shared about actually those who are not able to go over to San Diego, they can virtually register. That's quite great because not all of us can go over there and attend in person, though it still gives us that pleasure of attending all those great events.
And not all of us can stay up at the middle of the night and watch it live either. But when you register, you get the links. That's the best part. The keynotes, the devs on stage, and all that good stuff, right? So even if you don't watch it live, you get the links. Yep.
Yeah, that's quite great. Chimdi, I'll hand it over to you for questions because I can't see them.
Okay, no worries. I got you. Okay, so let's see. We do have a few questions here today. First one, I guess, from Pamela is, are the segments, Peter, that you showed in your viz there, are these made from interacting with a viz dynamic or static?
Oh, that's a good question. What's behind that? What do you mean when you say viz dynamic, viz static? It's a workbook, right? I mean, it's like if you would like do a lasso on a chart today and group it or anything like that, it will end up as an attribute. It will end up in your data field, right? And that's how it should work here as well.
So I guess, is it fair to say, like, the way it works today, like we have a static viz, we drag the markers and it selects them, same way it's going to work like that?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So there you go. Hopefully that helps you out, Pamela. Let's take another one from Tor, who wants to know, as a lot of us probably do want to know as well, what's the rough timing for the rollout of Einstein?
Remains to be seen. I would anticipate some very good words coming out of the conference in April.
Okay, so I guess we should look forward to that.
But it's not that I'm not allowed to say or anything. I actually don't know. That's the real honest. It's going to be here quite soon, and I would be surprised if we don't have something really big coming here in April. That's my guess. Oh shit, this is being recorded now, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so we'll look forward to that. Samir wants to know, is Agentforce a Tableau add-on, or is it a different Salesforce product?
It is a Salesforce technology that is being used in all areas and all aspects of the Salesforce product catalog. There are Agentforce components in Sales Cloud, in Marketing Cloud, in Slack, or in MuleSoft, and also in Tableau. The Agentforce is not a Tableau thing or a Tableau tab or anything like that, no. But we're going to leverage Agentforce technology more and more inside Tableau. And I think Pulse and Tableau Plus are the first two components where we see any of that part through the generative AI pieces, of course. But it's not necessarily, long answer to that, but no, it's not necessarily only a Tableau thing. It's a Salesforce broad technology. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So I guess it just goes across the whole spectrum there. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Then maybe one or two more. So John is curious about, if you're an Oracle company and use other software that is unrelated to Salesforce, how much can you really act with Agentforce, as it would basically have no ability to do things in a non-Salesforce system?
I mean, we leverage. Here's the thing: behind the scenes, there is an Einstein trust layer and a Salesforce Data Cloud component being set up at sort of, let's call it runtime, right? So the Salesforce components are going to be needed for any LLM, for any generative AI query, or to be sent to OpenAI. OpenAI is a partner at this point in time, right? This is the engine that generates any generative AI responses and things like that. Salesforce technology are required for that. You don't need to install Salesforce or build Salesforce or anything. It's going to be set up for us through the Tableau Cloud running. But if you're an Oracle shop and you have everything, your data in Oracle, it doesn't matter. You can still leverage this, and the prompts that we send out are going to be leveraged through a Salesforce engine and returned back into Tableau. You don't need to see or work with that.
Interesting.
But okay. I'm going to be, I'm transparent. I'm telling you what's going on behind the scenes there, right? It's that's how it works.
Awesome. Good to know. Okay, we'll do one more, and then if that's okay with you, you can kind of hop into the Q&A. You can actually respond directly to some of these questions that people have.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so the final one we'll do is, for on-premise Tableau servers, will any of these new features be available in the future? So for those who have their own deployment that's not managed, I guess, by Tableau.
Yes, not everything will be cloud only, of course, but when we're talking about Gen AI pieces and agents and things like that, where we're actually going to need to run through OpenAI and things like that, that is cloud only at this point. But of course, if we put segments into place, or some of these pieces that we see of the Tableau interface, that's going to be both for on-prem and cloud, of course. So it's not everything we do will, of course, be for both desktop and server and cloud, unless it's something that is very, very cloud necessary. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. That's good to know. So I guess people aren't going to be jealous that they can't, have access to the awesome tech there. Perfect. Okay.
Hey, I still use Tableau Desktop, and I'm going to keep using that for a while. And I see some new cool features coming in there too. So that's for sure.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So yes, there's about 2 more in there. So if you don't mind, maybe just going in, we'll really appreciate that. And we'll move on to, thank you so much. And great presentation.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome. All right, so let's continue the flow. We'll go to our next presenter today. Prasanth, do you mind sharing the slides, please?
Yes.
Perfect. Fantastic. So up next, we have Shazeera. And Shazeera is a data analyst in the product strategy department at Swissquote Bank in Switzerland. And before she moved into where she is now, she was a human rights and legal advocate with national and international organizations in Malaysia and Switzerland. And she was doing this for over 18 years. So currently now, If you follow her on Twitter or LinkedIn, you can definitely see a lot of the stuff that she's done with the illustrations. You can tell like she's a published comic artist. She does really amazing stuff. She's produced comics and cartoons for nonprofits and government agencies in Europe, Southeast Asia, and this is why she enjoys combining her brand of artistry and data visualization on Tableau. So if you haven't seen her profile, I definitely recommend going to check it out. She really does a great job of just bringing in the artistic side with her visualizations. She's also currently learning how to drum and write a novel. So of course, seems like she's expanding her skill sets as well, which is awesome. And maybe we'll get to see some videos of that as well in the future. Today, she's going to be giving us a talk called From Data to Drama, the Power of Comics in Data Visualization. And so we're going to pass it over to you, Shazeera, to give us the good stuff. Do you guys hear something? Okay, it's gone now. Yeah, there was a tick. And Shazeera, we can't hear your voice, unfortunately. Not yet.
Yes, I think that the sound is Shazeera mic who is doing it.
Oh.
She has probably like an echo. So it's time to say jokes until John, please say some jokes until we fix the issue. Yeah, Shazeera, try to log in and out. Maybe we will solve it.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I was asking Chimdi, what's next on your horizon? Apart from Makeover Monday, what's the next whiz or some passion project you're working on?
TBD, I will say, because I've actually been trying to see what can be different this year, but I think I would rather keep processing before I speak. But yeah, I'm thinking of ways to spice things up. How about yourself? What are you thinking?
I think this year, like last year, I want to go more into drawing more different types of model curves and get into creating more visual alphas of my own. So I did one last year, but that is what I'm looking forward to this year.
Nice. That sounds fun, actually, because like I think it's always good to see, the experimentation stuff, and then you can just kind of, share that, and like it can really pick up and give people great ideas on what they can do as well. So
hello, can you hear me? Oh gosh.
Yes, we can hear you. But you have to remove yourself from another one. Yeah, you have to.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am so sorry with the technical issues. I will try my best to not lose all the people in the process. Let me just see if I can share, because now I'm going on my. Can I ask for assistance or help from someone there to share my presentation?
I can do
Is
that.
that possible?
Yes, I can do that for you, Shazeera. Can you share that
Thank you,
link
Prasan.
on LinkedIn because I can't access my chat. So please.
Okay, sorry.
I will send you the link, Prasam, on
Yes,
private message.
yeah, I
I will
sent
do
you.
it now.
My face is here. So sorry. Thank you for the patience and understanding. I don't know what happened, but now I'm on my phone and hopefully I can continue with the presentation. I still cannot share my, but just to maybe get on with it because I'm mindful of the time. Thank you so much, Chimdi, Prasan, and Annabelle for inviting me to this tag, the first one in 2025. Really appreciate it. And today I wanted just to share a bit about how I feel that there is a place and space for us to apply comic storytelling to the dashboards that you do. And it doesn't have to be just your personal project, but it can also be for your professional business dashboards. And the idea is not, to really replicate exactly what the comics are in general, but rather we're looking into the principles and elements of the comic itself. So this is going to be the gist of my presentation. Do we have the wait? Hold on.
Just a minute. Annabelle, can you send me over the link to
Oh,
on LinkedIn maybe?
I did it
Yeah.
on private message, but I will do it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, because my message, unfortunately, I can't see message DM or anything.
I will promise you it will be fun and interesting since I'm taking all this time from people. Um,
Okay, here
Done,
we go.
Prasam. It's done.
Ah,
Sorry, first I didn't understood that you wanted me to send it to LinkedIn. You will see Shazeera's beautiful drawing done by herself. She will have to explain us where the inspiration come from.
um,
wait,
Annabelle,
hold on.
one more thing. Can you just check the link once?
Can I just?
I share it in LinkedIn.
Yeah, but it says page not found.
Let me
What's
try to share
happening?
myself. The problem that as soon as I share, I cannot see anything, so I will not be able
Yeah,
to.
I'm
Maybe
trying.
if you can, because
I
it
can
says
share.
page not found. It's weird.
Let me do it. Autoriser.
If I let me try, because
Okay.
my phone is very limited. Uh, let me just try. Open link.
Don't worry. I just need some time. Partager tout l'écran. Tell me if you see
I
my
get it.
screen.
I get it as well.
You can see it or not? I'm happy to
I
share
can
that.
see it, and I'm not. I'm able to access as well. So
Okay.
maybe yeah.
Thank you. Ah, you're a saver. Be like, no more Shazeera for this talks.
No, you will be not re-invited.
No, it's
Just kidding. It's okay.
totally
We
fine
leave
for
more
you.
time for Alexander to wake up.
Oh, okay.
And I can
So,
cut this part after the
okay, thank you. Okay, sorry for that. So this was also presented during DataFem Europe. So if any of you have heard or listened to the presentation before, take this as a rerun or a revision of what I've presented. So the next one is I want to ask all of you. So for the next agenda, okay. So this is basically what I will present today. The whole outline of my presentation. Next, please. Next, is it okay? So I'm sure all of us here are fans of comics or have read comics during your childhood. So I want to see you put in the chat box your favorite comics that you've read when you were a kid, or any favorite superheroes that you have, because it will be fun to see if you are also inspired by anything related to comics. So if you have any, uh, I love that as well. Peanuts, Calvin and Hobbes, Batman, Sandman. A favorite though. Now it's a bit controversial, but yes. The Far Side, awesome. Vito Bailey, The Far Side. Oh, there's a couple of Far Side, and then there's a bit more of the serious one, Thor, The Punisher. So we all are very, very used to the comics, right? And so, as part of my presentation, I also tried imagine who would be my superheroes in data storytelling. And I tried to sort of draw them, and I want to share them with you today. And maybe you can tell me if you have a superhero that can help you in your data storytelling, which one of these would that be? So it will be in the next slide, please. So basically, this is very much inspired by everything around me, including my cat. So the Empertizer is really my cat that I want to dedicate as one of the superheroes. But these are the superheroes I believe that can help me in my data storytelling. So the first one is really, I call her Nexus. She's the ancient storyteller that control insights on dashboards. And then you have Lady Axis. So she's basically the matriarch of the Cartesian clan who conjures effective charts. And then you have the White Space. He is basically the avenger for dashboards that were killed by bad design. And then we have the Empertizer, which is, I call it the greatest mind reader in the data galaxy. So he's the one with the soft heart, the one who understand, and communicate effectively among all the storytellers, all the superheroes. And lastly, what I call Datum, the guardian of truth in the Tableau universe. So it's basically your data source, your source of truth when you develop your dashboard. So you can also put in the chat box if any of these resonates with you, or if you feel like any of them really ones that you help you with your data storytelling. When I was doing the presentation in London, I actually did a survey with the audience to see who among these superheroes, the ones that really help Tableau authors to develop their dashboards. Who knows, in the future, I might draw an AI superhero or an AI tool, and also maybe the supervillains, because I know Annabelle keep asking me to to draw the supervillains so that we can really have a proper comic maybe
I
about
want to be a
superheroes.
supervillain. I want to be a supervillain, Shazeera.
I will think of one. I will think of one. Next. I love it. A mix of Nexus and the Empertizer. And also White Space. If White Space and Lady Axis had a baby, that would be me. Oh, that's a very interesting insight, Dennis. Okay, so now let's go back to what we're talking about today, right? Um, so the use of comics in data storytelling is not something that is recent. It has been done a lot, especially in the data fam. So if you go to Tableau Public, for instance, you can see a lot of this amazing work by the data fam that were inspired by comics and by the whole tradition of superheroes. Next. So, for example, if we can see the next one, I'm giving you example of some of the work that you can find in the Tableau Public. Here are examples of really the literal, I would say, adoption of the whole comic style into the visualization. They're really fantastic. I say, Melissa, where are you? Because when I was trying to look and discover the use of comics in data storytelling on Tableau Public, I come across this profile called Melissa, but she doesn't have any, context or anything, but she did a tremendous job in visualizing a very important story about cancer among a female. And if you can, Melissa, I still, continue trying to search for her. If Melissa, if you out there, you did a wonderful job in telling these data stories through comics. Next, please. Next. So, and there's some where we are not necessarily inspired by the whole tradition of paneling that you find in comics, but maybe we can also be inspired by the strokes, the design, the visuals or the graphic. For instance, for my INV submission for 2025, I actually use a lot of inspirations from anime and manga to visualize the story that I was telling about my decade of live music. So these are some examples that you can use as well as an inspiration. So let's go now to some of the comics tool, I would say, or elements that you can apply on your dashboards. So there are a couple. All of my dashboards are made by mind reading our stuff for them. Yes, yes. So now, the first thing about storytelling that I notice is that there's certainly an overlap between comics and data storytelling, and I think this is almost the case with visual storytelling. So there's a lot that we can actually learn and kind of transfer from one element to the other. But of course, there's elements of, I guess, what would be the best practice for your company, what would be the best way to tell your story. So you need to create the balance. But nevertheless, there's certainly an overlap between comics and data storytelling. The first one that I want to touch on is panel composition. So this is a very a typical element that you see in comic storytelling. Next, please. So if you read a comic, you would notice that the way the comic artists arrange the panel help you follow the story and build the suspense and also create a very nice sense of flow and rhythm. And the placement of the panel is not necessarily, we were calling it standard or uniform panel, but even the shape, the placement, the gutter between the panels, and the transition between the panel also can help build and tell the story that the comic artist wants you to do or wants you to understand. But then, how do you adopt this or apply this to your dashboards? Next. So the panel composition, in my view, is very interesting to be used in terms of building your dashboard in these following ways. So the first is in terms of the storytelling and engagement. So paneling, even before you start building a dashboard, like for me, I love to sketch my dashboards a lot before I transfer it to Tableau desktop or Tableau public. I use the paneling structure to help me build the narrative that I want to tell from the dashboard. Second is you can use the panel size and placement and color to actually build an emphasis and hierarchy on how you want your audience to understand or analyze or look at the data that you are sharing. And of course, the third one, which I think is quite universal, is about the flow and progression. Again, paneling really helps in creating a nice flow and progression for your dashboard. So you can even, create a distance between the KPIs and maybe the charts to create a sense of pause, or, the way you cluster or the way you move the story from one part to the other is also something that you can actually learn from the paneling of a comic. The second interesting element that I want to share here is the story pacing. So there is two quite common ways of how comic storytelling works. We start first with compression, because compression is quite the traditional way of telling stories in comic, and it has some background, economic, comics publications and distribution to it as well. It's very famous in America before the 90s and 80s. It means that the story is told in a very fast-paced mode. That means one panel to the other leads to one content. So this is something which is quite traditional. Like you can even complete a story, for instance, and sometimes it's called hypercompression in just one page. But then after that, I think when it comes to decompression, this becomes more popular in the 90s upward, when, like comic artists like Alan Moore or comic artists in Japan, like the ones who are manga artists, for instance, where they tend to create a cinematic approach to the story pace, which means they make sure that the speed of the story works in a way that give each story a time to breathe. And both elements, compression and decompression, has its pros and cons, definitely. But there is a way and there is a possibility to use both in the way you do your dashboards. Next. So I just want to tell that this is also examples of the comics that I do. If you're interested, I can also, direct you to some of the work that I do. So in terms of the use cases, when it comes to decompression, I think it could be a very useful tool in terms of providing more context and depth to what you want to say. So this allows, for instance, if you want to go a deeper dive into a specific data points, if you want to explain an outlier, or if you want to give more context to your dashboards, this is where decompression can be useful. And in terms of the Tableau tools that you can use, definitely, you could use the interactive elements, the tooltips, and also any other supplemental visualization that help you deep dive into the story that you want to tell. And of course, not all stories should be stretched, not all dashboards should be, slow pacing, but there's also place and time for compression. Next, please. So compression to me is something that could be useful when you want to focus on a key points. So this is really when you feel, and I think this could be very useful for dashboards for executive, for decision makers, where they want to focus on the most essential data points present in the dashboard. So it has to be concise and impactful, and this is where compression could be used to achieve this. So basically, by compression, you can make sure that your dashboard simple, easy to understand, and also could make more complex data more accessible. I also always imagine if you compress your dashboard, it also means that you are trying to avoid clutter and excessive information. I still feel that there is a balance, or there is a way that both can be combined, not at the expense of the other. And I think, again, these are tools that you can use to sort of explore what would be the best way for you to arrange your dashboard. Next, please. So another thing about comics is how driven it is by the character. We would root for the characters, right? When we read a comic, and comic storytelling is very smart, and I think very good at developing and exploring the character. Their motivations, their relationships is actually what drive the story. And this allow for a deeper emotional connection that you have as a reader with the characters in the comics. But then, of course, right, like for the purpose of a dashboarding, to what extent can you use such element of character-driven tool? Next, please. Compression, decompression. I'm reading while I wait for. So I think there are more and more now needs, at least in the context of where I'm working at the moment, to see the person behind the data, to see the customer at a closer perspective, to zoom into the customer segments. So this is where I see the connection between a character-driven tool in the comics that can be applied to how you represent or tell the story of the customers that buy the products from your company, or and you can actually think a bit more on how you can use this tool to make the decision makers or the people who are using your dashboard have a better understanding of the customers. And so I've been using this as well in the context of the work that I do for Swiss Quote. For instance, we now are looking into bringing more active female traders into the bank. And we use a lot of personas in terms of, better understanding who are the traders, who are the female traders. And in the dashboard, there's certainly a space for me to build and to highlight a bit more about who are these traders, who are these female traders. So this is an example of a use case of how you can use character-driven tool in your dashboard. Next, please. Now, the last one can be a bit controversial, I think, because, um, yeah, I would say kaboom, right? Like, should I have a kaboom in my dashboard? Well, no, of course. I mean, if it's your personal project, you can use it in a way. But I think what would be interesting here is in the spirit of what it means in terms of using onomatopoeia and visual cues. So for a comic, for instance, you look at how speech bubbles, thought balloons, and sound effects help and allow readers to follow the story. It's almost like signaling what's going to happen next. And also, of course, in the context of comics, the use of onomatopoeia is also trying in many ways to highlight or heighten a certain action in terms of imitating the sounds that the action made in the comic. But do you think there's a space for it in the dashboard? This is a question that I want to ask you. I mean, you can give me a serious answer. You can also say, it's not possible to do it, because I would really like to hear your thoughts about this before I go on to the next slide. It depends. Well, Andy's not here, and his magic words, it depends, still remained, useful, a useful statement. Kaboom, perfect example of his work. So I think there is a space in terms of the spirit of how you want to foreshadow a certain element on your dashboard. For instance, if you want to prepare your stakeholders in better understanding a very, very disturbing or a very big deep or decrease in the profit making or in the revenue generated or in the asset under management. So I think in that spirit, there is certainly a space for you to sort of foreshadow it by providing the right context and maybe add additional information or chart to explain that, but not like necessarily just put a big kaboom, right? So kaboom here can also be applied more as a spirit rather than the literal sense of kaboom. So here is some maybe potentials, but of course, again, depending on the business case, depending on what is suitable in the context of your work. So on the next slide, I give you two examples, for instance, how it can be used. Next, please. So the first one, I think, depending again, it depends, as you said, it could be something to sort of help you capture the attention and encourage exploration. Maybe a sign or a sound made when profit, reach a certain target, or when you reach a very dangerous spot of decrease in a certain part of the business. It could be. And then the second one is intuitive understanding. So it could possibly also help to make complex data more accessible to the wider audience. For example, if audio cue could help those who are not so data savvy to maybe be more interested and focus on a certain part of the dashboard. could be a potential. But again, this depends on the use case. This depends on whether or not it divert your dashboard or divert people from actually looking at the main things or the primary content of your dashboard. Okay. So here are some of my takeaway points from actually using comic storytelling in your dashboards. So to me, it's very important to ensure that no matter what are the elements that you use, be intentional in the usage, especially when I talk about decompression and compression. Prioritize the key insights, definitely. Decompress your dashboard with simpler views whenever necessary. In terms of building the characters, highlight the people behind the numbers. In terms of the spirit of onomatopoeia, and my cat is joining us, but he just left. Amplify your insight at the right moment to catch attention. And of course, I think the whole idea is, you are the superhero of your own dashboard adventure. So you make the right call in terms of what are these elements that you can bring and use in your dashboard. So that's the conclusion to my presentation. But I just want to share on the next slide. So if the next one, please. So on the next slide, if you are interested to follow this presentation in a comic format, you can find it on my blog, where I actually wrote or draw the whole presentation as a comic. It's on my blog, which you can find. I think the link can be shared. But basically, go on Medium. You can try to look for the Chronicles of a Data Rookie, and you can find the comic there. And feel free to use it as well in your work, or share it with others if they are interested to see how they can use comic storytelling in dashboards. And on the last, for the last part of the slide, next please. So this is, again, I say, this is nothing original. There's a lot of advocates, experts in the comics world, in the data visualization world, has been talking about how this world overlapped and how you can use comic storytelling in data, in your dashboards, in your data storytelling. So these are examples of some resources that you can use. I also learn a lot from Brent Dyke, for instance, who also talk extensively about how to use comic storytellings in data storytelling. So, there are a lot of resources out there, but if you have any questions, or if you have any feedback, or you just want to have a chat about this both world, because I really love comics storytelling and also data visualization, don't hesitate to be in touch with me on social media, and be happy to have a chat with you. So thank you again. I just have to make one one last point. I'm no longer on X, so you can find me on Blue Sky if you want to connect with me on social media, or on LinkedIn as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Shazeera. This was amazing. Like analogy, and we already know like your creativity. So, and how you form the story. And the last piece where you actually, I think that was where it started from. I think first drew the comic and then the presentation. Am I right?
No.
It's the other way.
This is the other way.
Okay, but
Almost there.
pretty interesting. Yeah, but it's pretty interesting. Okay, going back to when you started, just a question, because I'm an anime lover. What's your favorite anime?
Oh wow. Um, I actually love. This is a bit childish, right? But because I started from Doraemon. I'm not kidding. I started from Doraemon, and I started from Slam Dunk, and then goes to Conan the Detective. Really, this is like my, and then of course, when comics, when manga starts to become more famous, I think I'm more inspired by those kind of manga or anime. I think anime is the correct word for them. But also, I'm very much inspired by the Ghibli studio. And so if you are also interested to see how I'm such a fan, I also have a visualization about all my favorite Ghibli movies on Tableau Public. But yes, so that's my inspiration actually. Yeah. But in terms of, I mean, graphic novels, comics, I love the ones that are the human-centered story. My favorite graphic novelist, I think, is Joe Sacco, Alan Moore. Those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
that's a
Neon
great
Genesis
list.
Evangelion.
And
Yes, yes, sir. I saw a
and
comment about Neon, so
uh, Shimdi, I'll hand it over to you for Q&A if you have.
there's not
Awesome.
many questions. People were just excited about the comics.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
Actually, wait, there is one. Someone wants to know if you can include the links that you shared.
Ah.
Yeah, they want to know if you can add that into the chat or whether they can have that in some way to check them out.
Oh, I am very limited at the moment with what I can do. I will try until the
Yeah.
end of because I'm on my phone and I don't put a lot of things on my phone. So let me
Okay, I
just
guess.
try. I think I can.
Or like, I think you can just share that with the group via email, and then we'll just shoot it out to everyone. They can just access it there. That way,
Okay.
it's not too difficult for you right now. Yeah, we understand totally.
Apparently, I'm not very good with technology. So oh yeah, I can share. I can share it, and yeah, you can share it with the. I also saw some questions as well, but
Let's see, Q&A.
ever use actual comic box as image to display and call up by
Yeah, there we go.
formula based on the data? Wow. I have to say I haven't tried that yet, but that is a very interesting idea, John. It could be a very interactive way as well to use it. But yeah, no, I'll put that on mine and see, because I love to explore as well different ways of using it. So thank you for that question. Um, and if there's anything, all right. Really sorry that the link didn't work, but I hope you will get the link from the team, and then yeah, then you can have a deep dive into the comic. But again, thank you so much for having me. Maybe this is a bit different from the typical analytics presentation, but happy to be here and bring a bit of comics into your life this evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for sharing, Shazeera. It was interesting and we loved it. Okay, so I think we are on to our next and the final session by someone who has been doing some crazy work around colors.
Good evening.
Good evening, Alex. Okay, I need to share my screen. What is happening now? Entire screen. Okay. Here we go.
Awesome. There we go. Perfect. So last but not least, we have Alex here, who is a seasoned data and analytics professional. He's based in Auckland, New Zealand, and he's got almost a decade worth of experience. So he's originally from Germany, and he moved to New Zealand in 2015, and he quickly adopted Tableau as his tool of choice. Currently, as an analytics founder and director at Visku, he helps businesses unlock deeper insights and drive value from their data. And he focuses on efficiency and meaningful analysis as opposed to just the charting aspect of things. He's been an active member of the community since, I guess, the beginning of Tableau, and he's hosted the Auckland Tug for about 8 years now. And of course, he's done a lot of work, to run community projects and organize multiple virtual and in-person events to, help people scale up, learn, and getting acquainted with the tool. Today, his presentation is 50 Shades of Gray, Dominates Your use of color. And if you've kind of been following Alex, he's been sort of putting out a bunch of stuff like Prasan mentioned related to colors and, just helping us with that, the palettes and whatnot. So I'm sure he's got some cool stuff for us today. So we're going to pass it over to you, Alex, to bring us the goodies.
Sweet, thank you. Let me try to set myself up properly. Sweet. So, well, hello everybody. Thanks for having me. So yeah, the foundations, 50 Shades of Grey, how to dominate your use of color. What I'd like to do is sort of give you a quick rundown of the, or quick introduction into the use of color, a little bit of the theoretical background, some of the basics of how to use color, and then some tips how to bring colors into Tableau. Prasan and Chimdi already alluded to sort of build a bunch of stuff last year. Now to start off, there's a bunch of people, around 200 on the call. I assume most, if not all of you, have used Tableau for a while. And if you're anything like me and think back at your first dashboards that you created, they most likely looked somewhat like that. Potentially quite busy, usually a lot of color, and generally trying to sort of put everything you can on just one dashboard. And that's sort of a natural thing to do, just because Tableau makes it really easy to actually change those design elements and work with those design elements. So it's really tempting to just try everything and use color everywhere, because you might not have had the ability to do so before. But the problem with that is, I think, quite obvious if you compare it to a picture like that. You have all the information in the world in there, but it's really hard to find. And here with where's Waldo or where's Wally, depending on where you are on the planet, you have the information that he is somewhere in the picture, but because there's so much other stuff going on, it's pretty hard to, next to impossible, to actually find him. And that's where you can use color and of course other design elements to actually make that stand out and make that and the easiest way to do that here is do something like that. I basically didn't do anything but just fade out everything that is not primarily important, and you don't even need to search for him. Like if you look at the screen, even in the corner of your eyes will be drawn there because it's color. It's different than everything else, and that's sort of how you can use color to make information stand out and sort of help people understand your dashboards better and more easily. Now, before we go on, a little bit about myself. Chimdi already summarized most of it. I was born in Germany. I live in New Zealand for a little bit longer than 10 years now. I've been using Tableau for about 9 years in different consulting companies. And about a year, a little bit longer ago, I started my own company, Visco. So I'm basically doing data and Tableau consulting as well. I help sort of small and medium-sized companies to do Tableau, but also run their warehouses, implement their warehouses and these kind of things. And in addition, I run the Tableau user group. We also run Visit, which is sort of the equivalent of Data from Europe. So if you looked for another excuse to come to Australia in June, now you have one, because we'll have the event on the 4th and 5th of June, or sorry, 3rd and 4th of June, I think. Registrations are not open yet, but you can register interest, and we plan to open the registrations in the next couple of weeks. Now, a little bit of admin stuff. To address the elephant in the room, I live in New Zealand. We use British English, and we spell colors with a U. If you do it differently, that's fine. I hope you will be able to understand everything on those slides anyway. Also, a little bit of a disclaimer. As with nearly everything in data visualization, all of these rules, all of the things that I talk to are guidelines. They are not hard and fast rules. There's always exceptions to the rule, and there's always sort of special circumstances that might allow you to bend your rules to whatever you might need to do. So everything that I talk about today, take it as a general rule of thumb. In case you're unsure, following those guidelines will likely improve your work. So it's probably better to follow those guidelines than to think you know it better, especially if you don't work with visualization for a long time. But again, you might have a special situation where you decide that yes, that might be the general rule, but you want to do it differently. You will get all of the slides at the end, including all the links and everything that I talk about, and a bunch of supporting links that give you further information and further reading, because there's a bunch of stuff that just don't fit in a presentation like that. And obviously, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. I don't think I'll be able to follow the chat while talking. Now, if you take anything away from the talk today, it's that I want you to use fewer colors, more considered. In general, I think that most, if not all, but most dashboards can probably get away with just one dark color and then a white background. There's really, in most cases, color is more of a visual, of a design element that it doesn't necessarily provide a ton of information. I'll talk about the stuff, how it can provide information, but sort of especially in the business context, in many cases, you'll be able to get rid of most of your colors just by sort of restructuring or changing slightly how you look at the data. And what we're going to talk about today is sort of colors in the world, i.e. how do humans perceive color and why, colors in visualization, how you should use it and how you can apply colors in different ways. And then colors in Tableau. How do you actually bring your colors into Tableau and use them accordingly? So let's start with why color is so important. Now, on the next slide, we'll do a little experiment. Considering it's all online, it's quite hard to get sort of to read the room and get feedback, but I'll just let you do it on your own. On the next slide, there will be a bunch of elements, and I want you to decide for yourself. If I ask you to sort those elements into different buckets, how would you sort them in different buckets? And I'll give you a couple of seconds to sort of think about that. Now, obviously, that might differ from person to person, but I believe that most people would likely have said that it's a red bucket and a blue bucket, opposed to a circle bucket and a square bucket, or maybe a left bucket and a right bucket. And that sort of shows that color is quite strong in enabling sort of differentiation between different things. And in actual fact, there's very little that we can do to actually override that. One of the only things to do that is basically put a box in. If I did something like that, you would most likely most of the people would say, okay, there's a group of elements that is in the frame and a group of elements that is outside of the frame, and that is more important than actually the color of the elements. A different example for that is a little toy that we had at home for our kids, and I had it in my office, sort of somewhat in the left configuration, and then my, at the time, 1.5, 2-year-old came in, played with it, and ended up sorting it like it was on the right side. Now, we never told her that that's how you needed to play with it. We never showed her, we never like, here's what you need to do. It was just her desire to or she saw those colors, and her desire was to, okay, we need to solve it because we have colored pegs and colored rings, and they clearly match. And that goes a bit to show that there's a very natural tendency for us to connect colors. Like, it's not something that we learn or something that we need to be taught. It's something that comes very natural to us. And the fact that that is the case, it's called pre-attentive attributes, and color is one of the strongest. Now, what that means is that we perceive certain attributes like color, size, positioning. Actually, our brain perceives it, and our body has a reaction to that before we even consciously understand what it is we're looking at. That's all sort of it drives a bit into evolutionary theory, but for hundreds of thousands of years, sort of that was important for human survival, and that's still part of our brain. So that's how we work with color, and that's why it's so natural for us to sort of look at colors and perceive them in a certain way and assign certain attributes to them. Now, when can you actually use color? I think for a lot of us, it's I think especially when you start, it's color is sort of a design equals color. Like, it's very easy to say, oh, we put a bit more colors in there, then it looks nicer, it's less boring. And very quickly it becomes something that looks like drawn by a 5-year-old with all their colorful crayons rather than an actually designed piece of visualization. So there are 3 main use cases how you can use color. The first one is to actually distinguish different things. So in here you have 5 circles, there are 5 different colors, and the implication is that there are some, like they cover a similar sort of domain, but they are quite distinct. So there are 5 different, I don't know, there are 5 different products, 5 different countries, these kind of things in data visualization. And it's very natural for us to look at it and then think about, okay, they are different. And in actual fact, if you create bar charts and create give every bar a different color, that's exactly what you do. And you might not really be able to explain why you do it, but it just makes sense. They are different bars, they should have different colors. Like that sort of comes in naturally. Now, if we remove all the color but one, then we can use it to highlight. We can, like in this case, you're obviously drawn to the red circle because it's different from all the blue, but it doesn't really need it to be an alerting color. It would have the same effect if I had a bright blue color, a bright blue circle there, or even a gray circle. It just stands out. It's different than everything else. Therefore, there's some sort of importance that you can assign to it. And then lastly, it's to connect. Now, if I ask you what the blue circle represents, the bright blue circle, you'll be able to very quickly answer that it's movies and green is audiobooks. Now, there's no spatial connection to it. There's not even the same order or anything, but just by the virtue of them having the same color, it makes sense for us intuitively that they mean the same thing. And in fact, that's how color legends work, right? I have a color on a map or on a chart, and then I have a little box with the same color on the side that tells me that this is product A. And it doesn't need explanation. All of us automatically understand that this is connected and this means the same thing. Now, those are the primary ways how you can use color, and this is where color really shines and where it works really well. And there's a secondary way that is really common in data visualization, and that is to use it on sort of to encode quantitative values. So there are typically 3 main points. The sequential color palette, usually it starts at 0 with the brightest shade of a hue, in this case blue, and then goes to the maximum value with this, which is the darkest shade of, in this case, blue. There is sequential palettes that consist of more than one color. So the second one, it's called Viridis. That's quite well known in the data visualization space. While the first one, I would recommend to start it at 0 because it sort of makes intuitive sense that sort of the further it goes to white, the more it goes to 0. The second one doesn't necessarily need to start at 0. So if you think, for example, at GDP per country, there's no country in the world that has a GDP of 0. So you could use something like that. Because the GDP also will have a huge range over several orders of magnitude, having different colors there makes it much easier to distinguish sort of where they are and what values are close to each other, which ones are further away from each other. And then the last one is the diverging color palette, where you have a midpoint. Usually it's 0. Think about, for example, profit. You can have positive profit, you can have negative profit. And you can very clearly see if it's orange, it's negative. If it's blue, it's positive. And then how intense the orange or blue is, you understand the magnitude of that. Now, so far, it sort of makes intuitive sense, I think. But if you look at it a little bit closer, you will understand why that is a secondary thing to a secondary aspect to color. Because if you look at specific colors, in the first one, you can't really say that the circle in the middle is twice as blue as the circle on the left. Like there's no real concept of like twice as blue in colors. If you look at the middle, it's even harder. Like the blue represents 3 times the value of the green. If we start the axis at 0, if we start it somewhere in the middle, it could be anything. But blue it's not 3 times as blue as the green is green. Like the sentence doesn't even make sense. So it's hard for us to see that. What we can see is that they are probably quite far away from each other, but that's about it. And then for the last one, again, you can't really say that the blue is as blue as the orange is orange. Again, that doesn't make sense even as a spoken sentence. So there are obvious problems with it, and that's why it's a secondary mean. You can use it to indicate rough guidance and sort of a rough idea of a trend, but you can't really use it to convey exact information, like you could, for example, with the qualitative use of color, where you say these elements are different, they have different colors, they are different. And I think that's something where people make a lot of the mistakes, where they just assume, oh, this is well understood, we can use that to convey sort of very specific information. Now, how do we actually then use fewer colors and do that in a more considered way? I found this example of a dashboard online. I use that for years now. I don't know what tool it was created. I don't know the context it was created and why I found it online. It's just something that has a lot of things wrong with it, and I can use it for these kind of examples. And if we look at the use of color there, one of the main problems, I would say, it has a lot of color in there, and it has a lot of problems with there. If we look at the blue, I think that the blue means 5 different things depending on what chart you look. The red is the same. If I look at it and sort of we think about the pre-attentive attributes, my first instinct is, okay, the blue in the top pie and the middle pie means the same thing, because it's the same kind of color, so it just makes sense that it means the same thing, but it actually doesn't. So let's step through that and see what we can actually do with that. And to do that, I actually recreated that in Tableau. So we have that here. Now, I already think it looks quite a lot better because it doesn't have all these gradients and stuff on it, but it has still the same kind of problems in the end. So let's have a look what we can do to sort of change that and apply color better to make it look better and sort of less confusing. And the first thing that I usually do is to make sure that we use it more consistently. So use the colors in the way that makes sense. In this example, if your objects or if the things that you report on have sort of a natural tendency to a color, use that's something that you can use. Bananas are yellow, oranges are orange, plums are purple, apples are often red. Like coloring that way makes sense. You don't have to do it that way, but if you use those colors, then please use them appropriately and not like on the right, because that's get very confusing very quickly. If I assume that, oh, yellow is bananas and interpret the chart in that way and then realize, no, it's not. Similar thing, like you can visualize lands and water with green and blue, or sort of sources of power like coal, sun, and water energy as black, yellow, and blue. That sort of makes intuitive sense. It also means that we can try to do it consistently. So if we use the number of sales and the value of sales, maybe we use the number of sales in green and the value of sales in blue, and we do that consistently. So once our user knows that the number of sales is in green, they see green values and they know what they're looking at, and it makes it a lot more intuitive for them to understand. Or something like your current year's values are dark blue, previous year's values are light blue. Just to sort of give some consistency and make sure that people understand, if I see a certain color, I see a certain thing. If I see a different color, I see a different thing. Now, applied to our dashboard, what I did here was I used the same color, the same sort of red gradient for everything that looks at severity. And now you don't even need to understand what the dashboard looks like, but it's intuitive that there are 3 charts that look at the same kind of measurements, just because they have the same color. And then for the pie charts, I just used a different color palette for each of them. Now, please don't stop here, because that's not necessarily something that I would recommend, but it's more something to highlight that now you don't really have the danger anymore to think, oh, the pie charts report on the same things. There's different colors, so that automatically makes you understand that you look at different kind of breakdowns, whatever they might be. Now, if we want to use fewer colors, the easiest way to do is just literally remove it. You in the bar charts here, that doesn't lose any meaning, any value. You can see exactly the same thing. They are labeled in the bars, so you don't really need a legend next to it. So color really doesn't provide any additional value. So if we do that, now Removing all the color from pie charts makes them basically unreadable because it ends up either being just one colored blob, or you sort of have the different slices in there, but it's really hard to distinguish. So I did another change and changed that to a bar. And based on the previous example, we don't need any color anymore because the bars are labeled and the color doesn't provide any value anymore. And that already makes it look a lot better, I think. Like, it's a lot more consistent, it's a lot less color, a lot less to interpret, less legends, fewer legends, and these kind of things. But the important thing is that you don't need to stop at the marks, at the bars, the lines, the pies, and these kind of things. You can just remove color entirely. We just remove the green background, the dark green backgrounds for the titles. And if you look at the difference, like, that looks quite busy. That looks a lot cleaner. Like, I would consider that looks more designed than the other one. The other one clearly the other one looks like somebody did conscious choices, but I think this one looks more like it's design, like it has a certain aspect of design to it. And now that we basically removed all the color, and we can't literally remove all the color because even if we use black and white, like, we still have two colors. So you can sort of choose a base color, in this case blue, and sort of apply some consistency here. Now we can use color to highlight it. We want to draw attention to it, in this case bananas. And again, it doesn't need any explanation. It's just, it's different than everything else. Therefore, it must be important in one way or the other. And I did that by just remove the blue as well and replace it with a gray. Now what you can see is if you look at the middle bar chart, the little sliver of red really stands out. It draws us to and we see that there is an open case from May 2007, and that's probably something that we want to address. Now you can do something with the other red charts if you want to, and use sort of a different color maybe to not have them stand out that much. But that again depends on where you want to draw people's attentions and how you want people to interact with it. If you compare the two side by side now, I think it's a lot less overwhelming. Like, on the left one, you need to go back and forth between, for example, the pies and the legend to really understand what you're looking at. You have all the different colors there, sometimes the same colors, and it's just kind of confusing. On the right one, there are barely any legends, and you can see which charts are connected, which ones are not, and it makes it a lot easier to understand, I think. Now, those are sort of the primary uses of color. If we think about the secondary uses, I didn't apply them here because I don't really have the data. I wasn't really sure what made sense. But if we have a look at that, we could either encode the same measure on it, and then we have sort of the gradient from the largest bar to the smallest bar. I tend to avoid it because it usually creates more issues than it solves. If we think about the contrast, the brighter the bar, the less visible it is. It double encodes things where, well, you just need to look at the length of the bar to see which one is bigger. You don't really need the color of it. There might be use cases where that makes a lot of sense. I typically tend to avoid that because for me, it just seems like something to add something that doesn't provide a lot of value. What we can do instead, though, is we can put a different measure on it. So if you think about the length of the bar indicates the sales, the color of the bar might indicate the profit. And that suddenly paints a very different picture. While before we thought, well, we sell a lot of apples, that's probably a good thing. Now we see we sell a lot of apples, and orange means it's negative profit. So we actually lose money. While oranges, we don't sell as many oranges, but we make a lot of profit on it. So maybe we should get rid of apples, don't sell them anymore, and rather double down on oranges. While before we wouldn't have had the insight, here we can give a secondary insight and actually contextualize the values and help the user make more sense of the data that we have. So that's an interesting one. So we know how to use color now. How do we actually pick colors? And my maybe a bit controversial answer to that is, if you don't know a good answer to that question yet, then you just don't. I personally, I don't create my own color palettes. I have tried it a couple of times and failed miserably, just because there's so much to it, and like how colors work with each other. If you think about saturation and lightness, you want them to be sort of equal. You don't want the colors to scream at you. There's quite a lot that goes into it, and I personally find it quite difficult. And the good thing is there is a ton of online tools that actually can provide those color palettes to you. So the most famous one is probably Coolers, which sort of gives you a random color palette. There's the Datafilm Colors project from the Fleur-Large twins. There is a bunch of color palettes that were specifically created for data visualization, so you can just use those. And what do you need to consider? Now there's sort of three main points, I think. And the first one is something that's maybe a little bit politically charged, but sort of colors do carry stereotypes. I think we can all agree with that. If you look at certain colors, you get certain feelings and it evokes certain things in you. And that also means that you need to be careful what you invoke in your audience. And if, generally speaking, again, if we use something like pink, it tends to be perceived as weak. Blue tends to be perceived as superior, as royal, if you think about the whole blue blood kind of thing. Yellow for Asian countries, it has its root in the need of differentiating sort of the foreigners from the sort of self-proclaimed white superior Europeans when they started going to Asia. So all these colors have a lot of background that you might know, that you might not know. So it's quite dangerous to use that. In addition, for example, in the first bar chart, skin color does not equal race. You can be from Europe and can be black. You can be Asian and can be black. You can be from Africa and be white. Like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So with anything that is sort of socioeconomic, gender, race, ethnicity, these kind of things, be careful what colors you use. And sort of the tendency to use the color that first comes to mind might be more harmful than it helps. So be aware of that. The other thing there is consider how somebody would feel if they're represented like that. So if we look at the right chart, especially since COVID, if we look at a map and we see red dots, we very much sort of evoke ideas of infection, invasion, sort of negative things. If you talk about people on a map and put them as red dots on the map and suddenly there's a red cluster, how does it make somebody feel that was represented by that dot? Like, they might think they're perceived as an invasion or an infection, these kind of things. So be careful with that. Even two colors can cause problems. So contrast is important. There's a ton of things around contrast that warrants its own presentation. But if you just go and use one of the online color checkers, if you use two colors that are not clearly, that's a dark color, that's a bright color. If you have decent eyesight, it's quite surprising what doesn't go through as proper contrast. And lastly, the one that most people probably know about is color blindness. There's a lot of misconceptions as well. But generally that means that for the most common part, people perceive more blues and yellows rather than sort of the full spectrum. So if you use certain combinations, you can see that, like, for people with that sort of have the normal sightedness, they're quite different. For people that are colorblind, they look quite the same. And excuses like, oh, we only have 5 users using our dashboards. Like, it's like, well, how do you know they're not colorblind? How do you know the other audience won't change in the future? So just sort of just make sure they're colorblind safe anyway, and then you don't need to change anything in the future. Now, getting colors into Tableau, and I think I need to hurry up a little bit. If you use Tableau for a while, there has the preferences TPS in the Tableau repository. What it is an XML file that looks like that. Now, if you're business users, that might be quite overwhelming. If you're technical users, it's still a pain. Because you need to copy paste a whole lot of things. And I don't know about you, but by heart, I don't know what color F7 EDB is. I don't even know if that's a green or blue or purple. So it's quite difficult. So around the middle of the year, I decided that I don't want to spend four hours per client to create a color palette and bring it in Tableau. What I do instead, I spend 200 to 300 hours to create a web app to make it easier. So I'll just quickly jump into that, and you'll get the link to that as well. It's on my website. Where's my cursor? There. It looks like that. And what you can do is you can drop your preferences file in here, and it just shows what colors you have there. And from here on, you can do a whole bunch of different things. You can change the order of those colors. You can say, I'm more likely to use orange here. You could also say, oh, I want to visualize something for my kids. I don't know if you know Puffin Rock, which is a cartoon series. You drop it here. You get a bunch of colors here. And say, okay, I don't need black and white, but I want a categorical palette. I have it down here. And I would like a diverging one. And a sequential one here. And then what you can just do, if you want some standard palettes, you can click on the little plus here. You can use the Viridius. Most of those come from the DataFem Colors project, and say the Scream, appropriate for children. And then we can download the whole thing as a TPS, and just put it in our Tableau repository, restart Tableau, and then we have the colors available. I also, if you use Figma, made it in a Figma plugin, so you can drop the file in Figma. And what you can then do is, well, if you use some other tools or design in Figma, you just export it to Figma, and then you have the colors here. And how do I get the sidebar? No. Anyway, it adds it to the colors in Figma there, to the variables. So you have your variables here, and you can use them in the design. So if you change the colors, they change everywhere in your file. That's available for free on my website. So you can just go there, export your colors, and play around with them. And with that, a brief summary. What I want you to keep in mind is you should, there are three main uses of colors: to distinguish, to highlight, and to connect things. Use them as that. If you use them for something else, reconsider and see if that makes sense. If you use colors, make sure the contrast is sufficient. Make sure you use appropriate colors and stay away from those stereotypical values that might do more harm than good. And just use colors that are colorblind safe, rather than sort of random colors that might not be. And if you need to bring colors into Tableau, check out the style manager that I developed. It makes things a lot easier. I literally spend 2, 3, 4 hours before doing these things, and now I can do it in about 10 minutes or something. A little bit of homework. Once you go back to your desk, depending what time it is, maybe tomorrow or next week, just open your last dashboard and review your use of color. Maybe try to just remove all color and see if it's still understandable. If it is, just publish it as it is, and it probably makes the dashboard better. If there are areas where you still need color, just put that little bit of color back, and keep that to make sure that people understand it properly. And yeah, the main thing is just, when you create dashboards, use fewer colors, and do it in a more considered way. That's it from me. Thanks for listening. The QR code there leads you to my website, where you can download the slides, get all the links, plus a bunch of additional links to sort of look through. There's the tool there, the color manager, and you can get all my contact details there. And otherwise, if we have time, we can answer a few questions.
Awesome. Okay, I'll hand over to Chimdi for the questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Prasan. So, Alex, we do have one major question here from Jackie. Jackie wants to know, and I think you might have touched on this a little bit, but perhaps if you can just go into some more detail here. It says, what rules do you generally follow to ensure that everyone in your audience can easily distinguish color, i.e. those that are colorblind?
So there are a few color palettes that are labeled colorblind safe. So with that regard, you're usually safe anyway. Otherwise, there's a bunch of tools. Like I have an app on my phone that sort of uses the camera and on the fly converts it into how it would look like for certain different types of color blindness. There are Chrome plugins. There are online tools where you upload an image and it converts it. So there's a bunch of different ones. So that's one way to literally ensure that. Another thing is also, if you you learn after a while. You sort of get a feel for, okay, that probably works, that doesn't work. If you reduce your use of color intentionally anyway, you remove a lot of the problems anyway. Because if you don't color your bars in different colors, well, there's no problem with color blindness anymore. Even if you use red or green, well, it looks yellow or blue to people then, but it doesn't change the meaning. So that's usually how I would go about that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and I think that makes sense. It's basically just, when in doubt, just reduce color, because there are still other ways to encode. Because I think it makes sense to, if you can use it intentionally for its purpose, then do it. But if you can, then don't risk it.
Exactly. And once you do remove sort of the superfluous use of color, then you can actually do other things as well. Like, for example, the highlight, as I showed. If everything is colorful, nothing is important. But if only one thing stands out, then that's very clearly something that's more important for people.
Very true. Very true. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think it's funny, because obviously when you think about color, you think about beautification and aesthetics, but once you switch over to data viz, and it's a whole different conversation. Now you have to really think intentionally about what you want to do, because color can actually detract. So thanks a lot for these pointers. I think it's a thing where, we kind of know, but then how do we explain? And I think you've done a really great job of highlighting some important things to consider when using color. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are almost at the end of our event, and I think it was a blast of knowledgeable sessions altogether, starting from the new things that Tableau is coming up with. Then in between, we had a glimpse of what comics and this analogy with visualization can do. And at the end, colors. That's also one of my favorite topics, because I think colors are a form of language. It's not just putting out there for the sake of using it, and I think mastering colors is the hardest thing to do. So thank you for all the pointers, Alex. And thank you so much, everyone, for being with us and also interacting with us. That's quite important. And we look forward to hosting you again next month. So you can scan this QR code. You can register for the next event, because Annabelle is totally on it. She's already pulled up for the next month. So you don't have to worry about, okay, just block your calendar and be there.
If you don't want to receive all the email I will send, like, please register now.
Are you spamming?
Isn't that extorting as well?
Yes, I'm harassing people, so I will cut this part on the recording. Thank you very much, guys. See you
Thanks,
soon.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.